I've got the literal scars on my back from my encounters with Rachel. I've had quite a few elbows to the ribs. If he'd lived to see me elected to Parliament, he would have said, you work with more crooks than I did. Oh, get lost. It's just, this is like, I find this, anyway, it's just such a redundant, irrelevant question.
We are here at Labour conference, and it's the end of what we call the Economy Day. The Chancellor gave her big speech. We've also heard from Yvette Cooper, John Healey, Peter Carl, Bridget Phillipson, David Lammy, Pat McFadden. The great and good are all here, Wes Streeting. And I have many Burnham.
Bad and the ugly on
I'm just about to make my joke, and you've interrupted it. The great and good are all here, Andy. Oh no, hang on, let me do this again, because I wrote this joke and it's really good, and I really want to.
Right, let's start again, and we'll pretend that none of that just happened.
The great and good are all here, and I have many Burnham, I mean burning. That was good, wasn't it? Don't do that. There was a grimace over there.
Honestly, we should have just done the first version. My joke was much funnier.
All right, you do your joke then.
Well, I just did it, the bad and the ugly. You said that we got the great and the good on there. I said, and the bad and the ugly.
Anyway, I've got these Burnham, I mean burning questions for you. And the fun, I know, it was good. All right, you've killed my vibe. I was so pleased with my joke. But anyway, my first question, what I really want to know is, who is your best friend in Cabinet?
Peter Kyle.
Peter Kyle. And who is your second best friend in Cabinet?
Oh, that's really hard now. Well, Rachel Reeves, she's got all the money.
Yeah.
Well, actually, she doesn't have all the money, and that's part of the
You've
problem.
got all the money.
Yeah.
You've taken a lot of the money in your budget.
We are definitely investing record levels in the NHS, and we have been the relative winners of Rachel's budget and spending reviews, but everyone will understand what the word relative means against the backdrop that we've got. And so it's always the case, and it was the case when we were last in government, that it's investment and the modernisation that the NHS needs. That's how you deliver results. But we definitely need modernisation to do more of the heavy lifting. Regular conference goers will know I've had a slight adaptation to my script, because I used to say it's investment and reform that delivers results. The last thing the NHS needs is Reform UK. So we're now back in the space of modernisation. Unless someone can give me a better word. Change, modernisation, revolution.
Reform.
No.
Well, look, so Rachel Reeves is your second best friend in Cabinet.
Yeah.
Who has the hardest job right now? Is it Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer or Shabana Mahmood? Because it's definitely not you, is it?
I always sit around the Cabinet table on any given week and think, who has got the hardest job this week? And I always exempt Keir and Rachel from that equation, because whatever's going on in any given week or month, whatever challenges and pressures and plates I'm spinning on health and social care, they have to worry about health and social care. They have to worry about the state of the economy, and not just the public's finances, but family finances, businesses' finances, defence and national security. I could go on, I could go around the whole Cabinet table, and all of us as Cabinet Ministers have our individual responsibilities and challenges. But on Keir and Rachel's shoulders rest all of those challenges and pressures. And that's why, you know, they need people across the whole team to put their shoulder to the wheel behind them. They don't need commentators. Critical friends, sure, we've got plenty of those. It'd be nice to have just some friends. But, you know, the one thing I would say, though, because I think this is definitely a mistake we've made a bit in the first year, we talk a lot about hard choices and difficult decisions, and sure, there are loads of those. But that's what we signed up for. Like, it's because the challenges are so difficult and so hard that we wanted to win the general election, and we wanted to be in the privileged position we're in to make change. And honestly, even on the hardest days, I wouldn't swap the last year and a bit for anything. It is such an amazing thing to be in a position where you can do things and change things. For nearly a decade in Parliament, I could only say things.
Yeah.
And so we are in a really fortunate and privileged position, and we should remember that even when things are difficult and the polls are down and, you know, the challenges come thick and fast, it's what we signed up for, and I don't resent that, far from it. I embrace it and relish it, and it's the best thing I've ever done and I'm likely to ever do in my life.
And we're talking about hard choices, and I'm gonna move on from this because the budget chat kills the vibe a bit, doesn't it? It's hardly the
and
jolliest
also because I just have to
conversation.
sit here saying fiscal policy is a matter for the Chancellor.
Yeah, but Darren Jones,
Our
came
brilliant,
on.
wise, sound, prudent, amazing Chancellor,
Okay, so
on whose decisions the fortunes of the NHS rests.
there you go. She really is your second best friend, isn't she?
I've already made a big mistake in not saying she was my first best friend.
Yeah, you're going to
Sod
pay for
Peter
that on
Parley,
November the
hasn't he? He's not
26th.
funding the NHS.
Just before we move on, Darren Jones on Sky News today with Sophie Ridge and I, we were talking about the Chancellor's speech, and he said he was not ruling anything out or anything in when it comes to raising income tax or VAT or national insurance in the budget. He says the manifesto stands for today because the decisions haven't yet been taken. That surprised me a bit because it felt to me like in the run-up to the election and ever since, those three pledges on not raising those taxes on working people has sort of run through this Labour government like a stick of rock. It's been the identity of the government.
Yeah, and I thought Keir was clear on Sunday that the manifesto stands. We're standing by those pledges, standing by those promises we made to the country, and everyone can see the challenge that we've got, because on every single front, like, we came into a broken economy, broken public services and broken trust in politics itself. And that's why Rachel's job in particular, I think actually even above Keir's job as Prime Minister, is the most difficult job in government, especially now. And it's why the choices she makes really matters. And it's why at every single point along the way, and she gets a lot of flack for all the time she says no. And she said no to me plenty of times, and I've got the literal scars on my back from my encounters with Rachel. I've had quite a few elbows to the ribs over the last year. And she does have to say no as Chancellor quite a lot, so that she can say yes to things. Like, I thought that speech today, the reason why I thought it was the best speech she has given is because she spelled out, maybe in a way that we've not been very good at in our first year, who this Labour government is for and why our choices are very different to the Conservatives we replaced. And Rachel is able to say yes to those things because she also has the steel to say no to things, including things that I might want to do, that we might all want to do. That's the discipline you need and the strength you need as Chancellor.
You've led me neatly into talking a bit more about you, but before I do ask you about you, just to be clear, when Darren Jones says those manifestos pledges stand for today, what you're saying is those pledges stand full stop?
So far as I'm aware.
Yeah, OK, that's helpful. All right, well, look, we've talked a bit about your friends and you've talked a little bit about your backstory, because you do have quite the backstory, don't you? You're from a working class background in Stepney in East London. You're one of 8 kids, and your mum was 18 when she had you, and many people probably know this here. Your grandmother gave birth to your mother while an inmate at Holloway Prison. I'm not sure any other politician could make that claim.
No, although some of them have ended up serving at His and Her Majesty's pleasure. And in fact, if my granddad, who was my nan's husband, who had a string of conviction for armed robbery, I just know if he was still alive and if he'd lived to see me elected to Parliament, he would have said, "You work with more crooks than I did," because he was so cynical about politics, politicians. He was a staunch atheist. Thought I was ridiculous, kind of being part of the God Squad. But he had read in prison the Bible, he'd read the Quran, the Torah, like all of the major texts. Like, one of the amazing things about my granddad, the criminal granddad, is that there's lots of amazing things about my other granddad, who often gets overlooked because his backstory isn't so colourful. But the tragedy of my granddad is that he was extremely smart, and his life could have been so different were it not for the fact that he grew up in an abusive home where he was physically and sexually abused by his father, and where, in the end, the institution of Borstal, what was then the sort of young offending institutions of the day, and then prison as an adult, was more familiar, more secure, and a safer place to be than
So he
home.
kept going back because actually he felt safer.
So I'm not,
in an
so I'm not
institution than he
excusing
did.
his crimes and downplaying the impact he will have had on his victims, but he's a very good example of how a wise investment and timely intervention from the right people at the right time in our public services as they exist today might have changed the course of his life and his opportunities, and he didn't realise his potential, I'm afraid. And there were real consequences for my mum growing up with that kind of environment of dad being in and out of prison. And it's sort of, you know, that's the other thing I sort of think about on my mum's side of the family, is that intergenerational impact of all of that, compared to my dad's side of the family, which is much more conventional working class East End family, where we put the working into working class.
But do you think you make enough of your background? And the reason I ask this, it's fair to say, I think that some
My
people...
team think I never shut up about it.
Well,
I wrote
a lot...
a book about it. It was
Yeah,
a
I know,
Sunday
but
Times bestseller,
a lot
by the
of
way. It's a
people...
conference bookshop.
There you go. Jess has got one of those as well, haven't you, Jess?
Oh, she sells...
she's got four.
I
see your bestseller, I raised you
much
three
better
more.
than me. In fact, I was told by the guy at the Waterstones bookshop that last year my book sold very well, second only to Jess Phillips.
Oh, there you go.
There is only one Jess
She's your other best
Phillips.
friend, so you can't begrudge it.
She absolutely is.
But it's fair to say that some people would see you, if they haven't read your best-selling book, as a smooth London politician. But you're not, are you? I mean, you're not that. Or is he? We could take a poll. No, I'm joking. But,
no, I'm absolutely shaped by my background and my upbringing. And it's true, my accent, it still has an East End twang.
A little bit.
Particularly later in the evening after a few espresso martinis that are here. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, it's a very bougie event and a very boozy event. But no, it stayed with me. Like that experience has never left me.
Yeah.
And... you know, my family keep my feet on the ground. Not just if I get too big for my boots, but also in terms of their experiences and their outlook, their lives, which are very, very far removed from the Westminster bubble.
When you went to Cambridge, did you go to Selwyn?
Yep.
You read English?
History.
I interviewed Andy Burnham before the summer, and we were talking about his working class background, and he also went to Cambridge. He actually read English, I think.
Yeah, English at Fitzwilliam.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to Fitzwilliam, actually, so I read social political science. So I know a bit of what it is like to get there and feel you don't belong. And Andy Burnham said it was bewildering, and he said he was waiting for a tap on his shoulder of people saying you don't belong here. Did you feel like that when you got there? You didn't?
No.
You didn't? No. OK.
No, and look, for a couple of reasons, I think. One is I've always had, and I'm trying to find a way to describe this, because it's not kind of a chip on the shoulder in the sense of being resentful of people from backgrounds different to mine. I've never really felt like that, and certainly haven't since meeting people at university whose backgrounds were so far removed from where I'd grown up. But my best mate at primary school was this kid called Luke, who I thought was really posh, because he lived in this new development up the road from my primary school on Shadwell Basin, very smart apartments, you could still smell the fresh paint, and it was all very nice, and his home was very far removed from my council flat. And I thought they were rich. His dad was a taxi driver and a part-time photographer, and his mum worked in an estate agent. So we're not talking the Rees-Moggs. But they were like really posh, and he had a much posher accent than I did when I was at primary school, and we had a friendly, competitive rivalry. So I think that built quite a sense of, well, anything you can do, I can do. And I remember distinctly this conversation I had with Luke because we went to the same secondary school as well, and we were standing in the lunch hall during a break, and he said, "Are you going to go to university?" "I'm going to go to university." And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to go to... I mean, literally never thought about it, and I'd never stepped foot in one. In fact, I'd been to... By that time, but it's about 11, I'd been to a prison, but I'd never been to a university. And he said, oh, I'm going to go to Oxford or Cambridge University, because they're the best universities. Which university are you going to go to? I was like, well, I'm going to go to Oxford or Cambridge University. And I, again, no idea. I mean, the irony, he is, as we went through school, he had completely different ambitions. He went off to the Brit School. He's had a really successful career in media. And
so you're still friends?
Yeah, we're still in touch.
Nice.
But honestly, like, he was so important to me growing up because, I mean, I really hate it when people talk about middle-class aspiration, because it makes it sound like those of us who are working class have no aspiration until a middle-class saviour comes along and inspires us and alleviates us from our kind of, you know, little corner of the world, which I just think is so patronising. And actually, I've always had around me, like, my mum read to me all the time when I was growing up, because she said, in her own words, I didn't want you to grow up being made to feel stupid like I was when I was at school. And my granddad, on my dad's side, not the criminal, he was in prison, on my dad's side of my family, my granddad read to me all the time, and they encouraged me to aim high. My dad encouraged me to aim high. He was a bit of a disciplinarian in a really good way. So I always had that sense of being, like, encouraged and supported and challenged. But that friendly rivalry at school with my mate and great teachers, like, it just created the conditions in which I thought, well, yeah, anything I can do, I can do. So I got to Cambridge and I was like, great, I've made it. I've earned my place here. In fact, I had a row with a mate of mine who went to Harrow because I was making this argument that I had actually worked harder to get there than he had. And he really struggled with it and was actually quite offended. And I use the analogy that I now use in my schools all the time in my patch, which is, it's not that you don't deserve to be here. Like, you've reached the destination, you've reached the finishing line. But while you were doing the sprint, I was doing the hurdles.
Yeah.
And that's made me a stronger athlete. And I tell that story to kids partly to say, you are going to have hurdles. Secondly, sometimes those hurdles are going to knock you down. But thirdly, you might not feel it at the time and think it at the time. And goodness knows there are things I experienced growing up that I don't think any child should experience growing up. But has it made me a stronger athlete? Has it built my resilience? I mean, not a literal athlete, obviously. But, like, has it made me a stronger character? Has it built my resilience? 100%.
Okay. All right, so you don't relate to Andy Burnham on how he felt when he went to Cambridge. Is there anything else you agree on?
He's much older than me, so
it
was a very different time.
Is there anything you do agree with Andy Burnham on? Anything he's been saying you do agree with?
A few things, I'd say. Firstly, I'm doing a lot of work with Andy on the prevention agenda. Andy's in this kind of unique position because he is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, which is a city with big inequalities and big health need. But he's also done my job as Health and Social Care Secretary. In fact, he was my immediate Labour predecessor. So he's seen things through both ends of the telescope. So he's leading our first prevention demonstrator where he's pulling together a whole load of public services within and outside the health service to do effective intervention. So, like, we're 100% together on that. I actually think some of the stuff he was saying yesterday about culture of the party and having space for pluralism and debate about direction and being open to challenge and being confident in terms of debate, I'd agree with him there too.
Do you think there's a culture of fear in the party? That's what he was arguing.
I thought that was an overstatement.
But he's talking about people, dissenting voices being squashed, people losing the whip because they, you know, Jeremy Corbyn voted against Blair, 500 times. He never lost the whip. You can see why those that don't necessarily agree with the direction sometimes feel like they are being silenced or made to feel fearful.
I take the whip very seriously. There were times under a previous leader where I may have broken the whip and on a number of occasions on the question of Europe. And there are a number of times under the previous leadership of the Labour Party where I may have been rather outspoken about day-to-day political failures, but also moral failures under Corbyn's leadership. So I have a slightly more nuanced view about this because I spent from 2015 to 2019 actually uncharacteristically a rebel. Like, I am not instinctively a rebel, I am a team player. And I did not feel comfortable being in the sort of the Rebel Alliance.
Is Andy a team player?
On his best days, yes.
And at the moment?
He's had his ups and downs in recent days. I think the thing about Andy, he's one of our star players, and we need him on the pitch. And I just say, and this, I did a briefing for the delegates this week on the conference, and saying you're part of the, you're not spectators here.
Yeah.
You're part of the team, and you're part of the government this week, because you're voting on resolutions, you're taking part in debate, and this is a week where the voters look through the window into the Labour Party and go, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And, you know, whether you're the leader of our party or in the cabinet, whether you're a councillor or a mayor, whether you're a party member, a delegate here at this conference, we're all part of the same team. And we can see the people who want us to fail. We can see the people who want to trip our Prime Minister up, and who want this conference to be bad for Labour. And they're not on our side, and they're not on our team. And all of us need to put our shoulder to the wheel and ask ourselves the question, especially around the Labour conference, is this going to help what we want to achieve as a team, or is this going to set us back?
You're a team player, and you've laid out that case very eloquently about needing to pull together. But you do want the top job one day, don't you?
Oh, get lost. This is like, I find this... Anyway, it's just such a redundant, irrelevant question where a year into a Labour government, where Keir won a thumping majority that literally no one thought was possible when he won the leadership of the Labour Party.
But I'm not saying now, I'm saying... you in 2023 you said you'd die happy if you got to be the Labour leader.
I think it's really disrespectful to a Prime Minister that has done a whole series of things that everyone, myself included, thought was impossible. Like, he won the Labour leadership. People didn't think he would necessarily do that at a time when the Corbyn project had been riding high. He changed our party when no one thought it was possible. He won a general election, which no one said was possible. And now he's in a position where people are saying, well, he can't change this country and he can't win the next election. He's confounded his critics before, he will confound his critics again. And he doesn't need noises off, and he doesn't need... This isn't... We're not playing, like, fantasy cabinets here, and we're not doing politics as personalities and who's up, who's down. We are here in government with the privilege of being able to change lives and put our values into practice.
All right.
And that's what we're doing. And I'm very lucky, actually, that I'm doing a job that I absolutely love and relish.
Well,
in fact, there was a funny moment in the run-up to the cabinet reshuffle, which was the first time I've experienced a reshuffle in government, so it's a bit more real. And I'd heard a rumour. There was it was like on the civil service gossip train. You're going to go to the Home Office. What am I going to do? So I basically thought, right, OK, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell the Prime Minister two things. One is true and one is not. The true thing is so many spinning plates at Health at the moment, be a disaster to move me. Honestly, boss, maybe another time. But right now we've got too much going on. And if that failed, so sorry, Keir, I'm not the Home Secretary for you, I'm afraid. I want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And I thought if I told him that, there's no way he'd put me in the Home Office.
So what, hang on.
I had a whole plan to stay at Health, which thankfully I didn't need.
You didn't need to execute it, though? You didn't do a preemptive text just going, if you were thinking about... me moving to the Home Office, I will leave the ECHR.
On the day of the I really am like talking out of school now, but like, on the day of the reshuffle, Steve Swinford from The Times messaged one of my spads saying, hear it on good sources, obviously not, Wes is going to the Home Office. And that was the point where I was like, God, activate the plan, like, where's the ECHR, like, script, let's dust it off. And I messaged a mate saying, like, is it true I'm going to the Home Office? And they're like, no, you don't need to. I was like, and then when Keir rang and said, you know, Wes, just, you know, a lot going on, he won't repeat what he said, but he said, I want you to stay at Health and Social Care, and I just said, thank for that. And then realised I was talking to the Prime Minister of our country and I was on speakerphone and there were other officials in earshot and I felt mildly embarrassed. So embarrassed that I've managed to repeat this story publicly.
Brilliant, and there's loads of
Which is why I should
people
never have agreed to do this podcast.
Well, I enjoyed that, and
This
I'm sure
conference
everyone
has been
else
going
did.
so well. I was totally on message all week.
Well, let's get back on message, because the whole conference is building up to one moment tomorrow, the big speech at lunchtime. That's you on stage talking about the NHS.
Yes, that is. I am Keir's hype man. I'm the warm-up act tomorrow. Yes.
So what are you going to say? Can you give us a bit of ankle about what you're going to say tomorrow?
Tomorrow's speech from me is all about how we defend our values against what is, I think, an existential threat to our country, to our National Health Service, and to care in this century. And that is an existential threat from our political opponents in reform, and the fact that this is not just a battle between left and right any longer, as it was with the Conservatives. This is a battle between progressives and reactionaries, between patriots and nationalists, between hope or hate. But it's also about the wider challenge we face in terms of the way in which we are now really beginning to feel, and we're still at the foothills of it, the impact of the biggest industrial revolution at a pace and the scale the world has never seen, and how our health service and our social care services need to change with the times in order to ride the wave of that revolution rather than see our people victims of it. And the choice we've got, and the choice governments around the world face, isn't like stop or go, because it's happening to us. The question is the age-old question, and the fight that Labour's always taken up, of is this for the many or is this for the few? Is this going to be a revolution that benefits the most privileged and the most powerful in our society, in our world? Or is this going to be a revolution that benefits humanity? And that is the big choice, and that's why Labour's values are needed. They're needed to take on our opponents in reform, and we shouldn't flinch from that. We shouldn't be afraid from it, because that has always been our fight. This has always been Labour's fight throughout our history, from the moment we decided it wasn't enough to march through the streets demanding change. We had to march through the corridors of power to deliver it. Throughout our entire history, it's always been about, equality, democracy, collectivism, social justice. So we've got that fight against reform, the domestic political fight, but we've got the bigger picture here, which is this huge revolution, and who shapes it and in whose interests it serves.
But Wes, when you talk about the battle between progressives and nationalists, you said that, didn't you?
Yeah,
right.
Patriots and nationalists,
right.
Reactionaries, progressives.
Is the battle bigger than the Labour Party? Because it seems to me you're saying it is.
I think it is a battle that's even bigger than the Labour Party. But it's a battle that the Labour Party, and I think looking around the country now, only the Labour Party can lead. And actually, we can mobilise huge numbers of people to our banner. Because when Labour's been at its best and when it's been most successful is when we've got a broad coalition.
Would you team up with other parties if you needed to stop reform? If you think it is this battle which is existential as you describe it, if you had to, would you?
I'd say two things. One is, as far as I'm concerned, there is a progressive alliance in this country, and it's called the Labour Party. It has always been a broad coalition, and it's right from the start. It wasn't, it was built out of the trade union movement and the friendly societies, and a whole bunch of community groups, grassroots organisations. Look at the National Health Service itself. It wasn't, yes, Beveridge, a Liberal, conceived of it, and we should acknowledge the role of Beveridge in all of this. But where was it happening in practice? Like, where did the National Health Service really find expression through real change, real services, real lives? It wasn't in 1948. It was in Tredegar. It was in the pit villages and communities of the northeast of England, where you had working class people who got together, pooled their resources to provide collective protection for themselves and each other through that collectivist action. That's where the idea of the National Health Service was born. And these are our ideological roots. But, you know, in terms of that fight against reform, you know, I think there'll be lots of disaffected mainstream conservatives with a big C and small c who'll be thinking, I don't want to see reform in government, and they're welcome to get behind us. I think there will be our Liberal Democrat frenemies in Parliament. Some days they're friends, some days they're enemies. We are different parties, different political traditions, but I think we've got a common enemy in reform. We've got to be a force that's about uniting our country, bringing us together, because look at the big challenges we face, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on public services, whether it's Britain's place in the world. Government has got a role to play, but we can't do it alone. We have to bring together government, business, civil society, and all of us as citizens to tackle this country's problem.
The doctors' strikes in July have happened. There could be more. Doctors' strikes hamstrung the last government's effort to drive down waiting lists. You are making progress, but are strikes going to do the same for you? How much of a problem is it for your government?
It's a real risk. And what I've said to the BMA is the NHS is hanging by a thread. Don't pull it. It wouldn't be in the interests of doctors, the BMA's members. There isn't a more pro-doctor, pro-NHS government waiting in the wings. What there is Nigel Farage, a man who would introduce, by his own admission, an insurance-based system, who would check your pockets before your pulse, and ask for your credit card before your care. A man who is so reactionary that when he was asked whether he backs medical science over populist claptrap, said, I don't pick any side. At a time when there will be women in our country and around the world, pregnant, worrying about doing the right thing by themselves and by their baby, thinking, is there something in this? Is it worth the risk? That's so irresponsible. And finally, and like the BMA should really think about this in terms of their members, because I think about it in terms of my friends and my neighbours. The idea that we would have a government that would say to doctors, nurses, care workers, we don't want you here. You must go home because you earn less than £60,000, breaking up families, shooting ourselves in the foot while we're at it.
Yeah.
Farage says, go home. The Labour Party says, you are home. And with us, this will always be your home. So I'd say to the BMA, pick a side.
Okay.
Because you've got a choice here. And there's a government that wants to work with you. 28.9% pay increase for resident doctors. The biggest uplift in funding for general practice in a decade. Like, we can be adversaries and we can fight each other and we can all lose. Or we can work together. And it's not just the BMA. I'm responsible for 1.5 million workers across the NHS. And I've got responsibility to all of them, including the people who, at the height of their career, will never earn as much as the lowest paid doctor. So all I say to the BMA, and actually to everyone else who tries to pull me in all sorts of different directions, I can't do everything for everyone all the time. What we can do is work together, and day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, get the NHS back on its feet.
But Wes, you know they say that their real
future.
terms pay is at the levels of 2008. That's what they argue.
Well, we can argue about what the benchmark should be. We could argue about whether that's the right measure. But what is unarguable is that literally within the space of 1 year, one health secretary gave resident doctors a 28.9% pay increase with the decisions that he took.
OK, so no more pay rises.
And we can't afford it at this stage. We just can't. I'm being honest with the BMA. What we can do is work together.
Wes, I have to let you go, but before I do, just let me do.
From the spat.
I know he's really quite intimidating. Actually,
well, actually, to be fair, that is just Will's face.
Yeah. OK. It's his resting face.
That's his resting face. But he actually does want
OK.
to go.
Quick fire. Manchester Mayor or London Mayor?
London.
Best podcast analysis: Alistair Campbell, Ed Balls, or Harriet Harman?
Harriet Harman.
Excellent, correct answer. Lastly, oh no, this isn't. Married at First Sight or Love is Blind? He's not watched.
Not watched either of those.
That is very
I'm
disappointing.
being told marriage at first sight.
OK. And
People what they want.
And just on the cocktail theme, we went to this cocktail party last night and the cocktails were named after Labour politicians. It was painful. There was a Kia Royale. Do I need to go on? But I want to ask you, what do you prefer, a Bridgerton tonic or a Lucy Powell fashioned? That doesn't work, I know.
Actually, the best cocktail last night was the double lammy.
Ah, he swerved that. Did you notice? Did you know? The double lammy was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or what else was there? Oh, there was the Wespresso.
The Wespresso martini, I know, but that would be a bit self-referential.
Well, I just want my own
I said
cocktail.
I really like
Well,
my
look.
cocktail, thanks very much.
You're off for more cocktails. No, you probably actually have to go
I'm off
this
to
week.
the Terence Higgins Trust.
There you go.
LGBT
All right, well, look, thank you so much for joining us on the
thanks
podcast.
to you. And
It
let
was
me just
thoroughly
say, 'cause,
enjoyable.
Harriet told me to, Electoral Dysfunction, the best podcast on the internet. Subscribe now, like, subscribe, share with your friends. It's all there. The hot takes, the insight, and the occasional drive-bys.
I cannot find a cabinet minister that will not do what Harriet Harman says. It's amazing. It's amazing. Wes Streeting,
know.
thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks so much.